This story comes from an anonymous subscriber. My story is about my grandmother's experience of a ghost encounter. It happened back in 1976 in a town called Aylesbury. The sun was shining and the weather was the best they had had for a long time. My grandmother had come back from shopping with my mother when they noticed a little girl playing in her front garden. They were neighbours. My mum had started talking to the little girl, asking how she was, when my grandmother had decided to take the little girl to go get sweets. The little girl said thank you to my grandmother for the sweets, and on their return to the house, my grandmother looked round in horror to see the little girl had gone. In a panic, she raced to the little girl's parents' house to explain what had happened. As the door opened, my grandmother in a panic was apologising to the girl's mother, saying how sorry she was that she had lost her daughter. With a confusing look on the woman's face, she had responded with what put chills up my grandmother's spine. "My daughter's dead." To my grandmother's surprise, the woman continued, "She died 2 weeks ago from a brain hemorrhage." The woman explained further details of what had happened. She bled out from her eyes, ears and nose. My grandmother was horrified and thought of the poor little girl dying in such a way. More confused and frightened that she had just realised the little girl was the ghost of the neighbour's daughter. She hasn't been seen since this day, and my grandmother never speaks of the incident. The legend of the rail line ghost started off for what we thought was just scary stories we'd make up to scare each other when the nights drew in, while we all chilled out in the front green. My friend Lee had told this story to us, and it started off about this woman who was walking her dog on the railway line that was only a few hundred foot away from our houses. She was hit by a train and lost her head in the process, rolling down the side of the hill. The legend of this ghost was, if you saw it on its fateful night of the anniversary, the ghost would stare at you for a few seconds before its head fell off, rolling down the hill, and she would come chasing after you, looking to possess the unfortunate souls of those who didn't get away. After hearing this story, my friends and I shrugged it off as just a spooky story, as did Lee, and so we went to bed and went to sleep. A few months later, after forgetting this story, Leah told us, me and my friend John and Lee were going off to the Chinese to get our usual tradition of egg fried rice and chips and gravy. As we started walking from John's house, we got to the opening of the drive that took you down to the garages behind our houses, which also gave you a perfect view of the railway line. Lee had stopped in his tracks only to have turned white in the face. Both me and John looked at him in confusion, asking him what was up, why he had stopped. He just pointed to the railway line. Both me and John looked to where he was pointing, and that's where we saw her. The ghost, the legend, that was meant to be a stupid scary story, was walking along the railway line. She walked only a few paces before she stopped, and that's when my heart stopped, and I froze. She knew we were staring. She looked with a quick flick of the head, and she stared straight back at us, and then it happened. The head, it fell off, like it wasn't even attached, and she came towards us with great speed. We came out of our stunned phase and ran straight up the street, not stopping until we got to the shops we had intended on going to. We didn't talk, didn't utter a word to each other at first, until John broke the silence. "Did that really just happen?" Both me and Lee just looked at him with that look of fear and replied, "Yeah, what do we do now?" We discussed our options, got our food and took a different route home, luckily not coming across the ghost we had just witnessed. Lee was mystified as to how the story was true. Even he didn't believe it. When he told it, he was so casual about the story, which is why we never thought of it after he'd told us. After that incident, I never looked at the railway lines again at night, and had never fortunately had to witness such an event ever again. Whether it was Lee messing around with our heads, or an overreaction from what we were seeing, this event truly scared me, ghost or no ghost. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe and leave a comment. If you want your story to be read out by me, the details are down below in the description.